All right, everyone. So now that we got a few minutes, I'm going to go over a few things this week. I'm going to go over a few things in this little short while we wait for the guest. One thing that has become a little difficult, not when with particular friends. All right. I wanted to do a little bit of a reaction today to two things. The first thing is the idea that you should be clapping for everyone on social media because it makes, you know, it could make networking easier. Your life gets better when you clap for others. Years ago, I was feeling rejected, let down, and discouraged. Despite those feelings, I began to engage on LinkedIn. I celebrated the achievements of others. What happened next came as a surprise. People appreciated my genuine comments, connected with me. A network of people who do good work was built. Always clap for people who are doing good, even if their dreams transpire before yours. When you like and comment, you are engaging in a powerful way, consistently supporting others allowed me to grow. The community, friendships, and opportunities came into my life. When you engage on LinkedIn, you are networking. All right. A couple things that this post literally missed, literally misses. First thing, this post misses a couple points. There are a lot of creators like that particular person who have a very large account who she's good about engaging on people's content. She's good at engaging on her content, but if you try to tag her, she doesn't necessarily like or engage on, smaller accounts. This has become a problem with that platform, with this platform, because larger accounts could help smaller accounts like myself or medium accounts like myself get better. Now, as per the statement on clapping for others, there's an example that I used that may have probably it got liked by her, but on the other hand, some people don't want to hear the truth, but the truth is kind of necessary in some aspects. All right. For example, let's look at offline, okay? And I used a few examples. If you're talking about others here, okay, sure. I don't know them unlike my old crew, you know, but in a sense, is clapping for others going to help me rent an apartment? No, but it's the nice thing to do for others. Honestly, in my opinion, you shouldn't be clapping for every person just because they're doing better in their life than you might be at the moment, because it's not possible to be happy for everyone. You have to be in a place first and foremost that is conducively good for you. So if you are happy in your own life, it's easy to clap for others. It's not easy to clap for others when you're not in the right place. I think that's a huge thing that the post missed. Okay. The next thing that the next little topic that I think needs a little bit of a discussion is a poll that I conducted last week. That poll last week was about, or posts series was about, does it matter how you build a business? One of my old friends decided to focus on two things that I posted up on social media. which in this case was the LinkedIn platform. What he wants to say is, for the 3000th time, social media is like a drug, good for some, bad for others. Well, okay, if you look at LinkedIn like that, then, and you can build a business based on referrals, okay, good for you. Now, if I'm building a media and a broadcasting company in this situation, which is centered around the podcast and consulting, this can't really be done face to face. That has to be understood. You have to utilize technology and online platforms to be building this stuff to get interest for it, because otherwise how will you know if it scales? Some people unfortunately just want to be old fashioned and outdated, or they just don't want to admit there are things that they don't specifically like about social media. Social media is what you make of it. I'll leave it at that. In terms of how you can utilize social media, good or bad, it's up to the creator. That's what people are going to need to start to finally understand about social media going into the future. As we wait for my guest, I hope you learned something from the two of these examples. We'll see you soon. All right, you ready?
Hello, Benjamin.
Hey, what's up? All right, you all ready?
I am ready.
Okay. All right, guys. So, welcome to another fun-filled episode of the Pick Your Brains podcast. Today I actually have the honor of welcoming somebody who went to high school with me. And actually, if I remember correctly, we both went to the same elementary school. We just
hmm
graduated 1 year apart.
hmm Yeah,
So,
that's correct.
for anyone who doesn't know, this is one of my oldest and closest friends, Douglas Carpenter, who happens to be a New York State certified and degreed teacher in the Somers School District, correct? Or is it Byram Hills?
So, yeah, I teach in Byram Hills, but I coach at Somers.
Yeah. We're going to discuss a little bit about sports since part of today is also going to be a guided mental health discussion. But just so be, I know you, but what I would like you to do is not do a little, give us a little bit of your backstory growing up in the Katona community and what your childhood was like.
I was born and raised in a good family, and my parents taught me the value of hard work, and again, was lucky enough to be in a really good school district. Um, where I got a very good education and was able to play sports. Um, and ultimately decided, because I had a lot of teachers and coaches that I thought really looked out for me and helped me out. So I wanted to go into education and teach and coach myself. So that was something I knew I wanted to do, probably around junior, senior year of high school, and was able to go study at SUNY Cortland and get my degree, and it's all been pretty good.
So we're going to start with a good question. What level of our primary education did you sit there and say, I would like to teach and coach? Was it was it middle school or was it high school that you
It
knew?
was, it was high school. It was high school. Yeah, middle
Was
school.
it
I didn't.
was it
I,
middle or was it more like your last year, which was my second to last year?
so it would have been my junior, senior year, like around then. My last 2 years.
So that's
Um,
when, if I remember correctly, we transitioned from Jim Brandt to Jimmy Clark, correct?
yeah, yeah, it is.
And it was very interesting because my memories of Clark were he did some good thing. He did a lot of good for you guys as players, but also for me just as a student, and kind of give me a foundation which I could work with. The only thing I would just say to you is my parents taught me the value of hard work, and I believe hard work on some level, depending on what you're doing, can be rewarding. But I think what we're starting to see today is that not in every situation hard work is going to get you promoted. In some industries today, unfortunately, hard work equates to going to get another degree.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the way you could look at it. I think from certain perspectives.
And even athletes today, which I think we'll focus on a little bit later, from what I've seen, hard work doesn't get every athlete to start. Athletes today are probably much different than when we were growing up. That's for certain. I think when we were growing up, everyone had more of a drive to want to play a sport. Today, from my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, not every athlete is thinking the same.
No, I mean, I think kids are the same. I don't kind of buy that like kids are different today than they used to be. I think kids are always kids, and it's just kind of like the world that adults, and parents, and teachers and coaches that we kind of create, that's different.
So, what do you believe is different today about what parents create for their kids from when we were growing up? Since when we were growing up, a large chunk of our parents were from what we call the baby boomers generation, which was born 1946 to 1964.
Yeah, I just think like when I was going through high school sports and stuff like that, I didn't really know a lot of people in our parents' generation that played a college sport, and exactly what was entailed in that. I knew it was something that I wanted to pursue, but um, I do think that a lot of kids today don't look at a sport as a stress reliever, as a way to have fun with friends, but it's a part-time job that you're not getting paid for. And at the end of the day, it does have to be fun. It absolutely should require a lot of hard work. If you're going to put time into something that you care about and you're passionate about, um, it's something that should get a lot of hours. But just the I think a couple things that we see now, I think, is we do see a sports specialization push coming from not necessarily parents, but maybe from just a few different sports in particular. Whereas growing up, I just remember everybody played as many sports as you could, and some people naturally kind of focused on a couple once we got to high school, but growing up, you just played everything. And
Well, yeah, because from if I didn't necessarily get to, you know, pursue some type of a sport the way you guys did in college, but I have heard that the more sports you played as a kid, the more athletic development happened within your body. Whereas today, what you're saying sounds to me like if they're too focused on one area, what happens if they're not that good at that sport?
yeah, I think it's silly to put all your eggs in one basket. And again, to make it as a successful college athlete is very rare and hard. So I just think that kids, should be more pushed academically, and
Or
although
creatively. There's a whole world of creativity out there, as well as one thing this podcast has done for me that was different from high school. I always had an interest in the film industry, and
okay,
broadcasting, was broadcasting and film was a lot different when we were growing up. One thing that changed, and it's actually interesting. If you wanted to make something like a podcast back when we were growing up, technology hadn't fully, you know, developed the way it is today. Today we're doing this on Zoom. We wanted to do
right,
something like this back in the 2000s. You had to have a camera and editing software. Now, if you want
correct.
to record a podcast nowadays with Zoom, you can crank out at least 2 to 3 a month,
Yep.
and that's how advanced technology has gotten, which is quite interesting, and that's just in our own short lifetimes.
Yeah, I mean, you could also argue Zoom, has been much more popular as a result of the pandemic and post COVID and all of that. But yeah, I mean, we didn't have the technology to, if we wanted to do something like this, we would have had to use a traditional camcorder, and then
Oh yeah,
you would have had to publish it.
yeah, and then edit it, and it would take a much longer process. But it goes to show you that now, with how technology just developed within the last decade, it's amazing that we're able to do things like this now with how advanced technology is. I mean, even back when our parents were growing up, when you had the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, everyone thought he was crazy for wanting to build an entire, you know, digital store online, and look at him now.
Yep. Yep.
And he was
Um,
right too, because even though he said back in 2000, 1 year before 9/11, this model's going to go bust, look at it later.
yeah.
He
Yep.
famously said that to his investors. I don't think there's going to be a future this idea is going to work long term. And then two whole decades later, look at how well off he is with the idea because we all buy our products online now,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
whether it's for good or bad. So, all right. So now that you covered how you knew junior year, how did you meet your current head coach, Anthony DiMatteo Jr.?
So Anthony and I'm just gonna plug in the charging cord right here. I just want to make sure my phone doesn't die.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I may transition to a computer in a little bit as well. Um, so Anthony and I we met um in the All-Star game our senior year.
With Mike Bachland and Ricky Bolander, correct?
Yep. And
That was my junior year.
yes. Yeah. So me, Ricky, Mike, and Tommy Albano got the chance to play in the All-Star game, and Anthony playing for Somers, and we just kind of naturally met and hit it off as friends. Also, Coach Clark went to high school with Anthony's older brother, Dominic, and
And Jimmy Clark also played for DiMatteo Sr.
he did, yes. So, he knew that we were both going to Cortland and kind of like, helped like kind of orchestrate a little bit of the meeting. And yeah, Anthony and I met that week, and he was a great dude, had a contagious energy that, people just wanted to be around. And we were lucky enough to be able to room together in college, the following year. Although he did mess up some paperwork initially,
Sounds
but
about right with him.
yeah, I mean, it's 18 years old, paperwork wasn't his strong suit. So well, it wasn't any of our strong suits,
No,
but then
because
we
there was a lot of stuff we eventually had to learn as we grew up as well. Like you know, I, I could completely pick your brain on this, when we get to the part about, your career as a teacher where I believe some things have changed and gotten better, but there was not enough emphasized, like you just mentioned, paperwork. I mean,
right.
there's plenty of arguments that we should have been taught personal finance, even though we were taught home ec, and home ec covered some of that stuff back in the middle school. It's just the curriculum never made it to high school.
Yeah, looking back on it, and being a high school teacher now, I do wish like I learned a little bit more. I I I remember taking an accounting class in high school, and or maybe a personal financing class, and not being too interested in it at the time. So that could have been something that was provided for me that I just didn't really grasp.
I think it was different for the reason. I'm going to give you an interesting thought process because my father's a CPA and he's in corporate finance, and my mother
Okay.
is, pretty decent with numbers herself. I learned through them. I was not interested in this crap as a kid either, like learning how to balance a checkbook, even though my mom emphasized it, that this was an important life skill for a bunch of years, especially being someone on the autism spectrum, because us in money management, if we're good enough with it, it's not the world's easiest thing in the world. I felt if they taught it in a way that I would have understood it back in high school, I probably would have been interested in it, like the same way that I was interested in history.
Okay. Fair.
But when I took a personal finance course at 32, and I think and this was going into my final semester of my 9-year college education. I finally sat there and could understand and appreciate learning this stuff about personal finance, but after having some bad, experiences along the way. Like one example was early on in our childhood, when my dad put me on a credit card, it kind of screwed up the credit card and then messed up his credit a little bit. Then I got my own credit card back in 2010. I screwed that up. Now I've had since 32 and leaving college, I've had three credit cards. one which I'm paying off right now, which is a little bit of a higher limit, and two smaller ones. Yes, af- after on the fifth try, with a sufficiently good enough income now, I'm finally able to manage these things.
All
But
right, good.
to your point, we should have probably learned it back in high school, but you're right. I don't think our brains would have understood it because finance is not an easy topic.
No, Ben, I'm gonna try and switch over to my computer right now. I just want to
Okay.
give you just a heads up.
Okay. All right. You good now?
Can you see me and hear me, Ben?
Yeah, I can see you.
Awesome. All right, great.
All right.
Uh,
So, yeah. So, curriculum has definitely changed. We'll touch on autism in a little bit. Now, when you were at the three of you, did Fred play at Cortland?
Rick initially played football at St. Lawrence, and then he uh, broke his elbow, and then when he transferred to Cortland, he didn't play. No.
So what was it like playing with Anthony in college, and what was it like? What were the practices? Were they 2 a days? Were they 3 days, or just like one session?
So this was around the time when college football was kind of getting a little bit more fierce with how they were mandating practice. So we were able, I think we did like a 1-2-1 system where you could do doubles, but you couldn't do them back to back days. So, you'd have a 2 day practice, then you'd have a single practice, and then two a day the following day. And they were really hard. I remember
And this is
going
at
with,
a Division III school, right?
yeah, yep. SUNY Cortland, who they did just win the national championship um, for football in Division III, which is awesome. But yeah, I thought I was going to go in there and have a lot more success than I did, and I was humbled very, very quickly. And I thought that the jump from high school to Division III was not going to be as big as it was, and I just remember, being like a fish out of water initially, and
So it
I
was a
don't,
lot harder than you anticipated.
yeah, yeah, it was the talent level was a lot higher. Um,
Well, you can only imagine what Division I is like, and that's considered a full-time job.
yeah, yeah,
That at one point, when we were all kids, you couldn't get paid for that at Division I. Now you can get paid.
yeah, which is nice. I don't think I would have had any NIL deals going back to
No, but it's nice to see. But it's nice to see now that they fought for it for a bunch of years, and the NIL deals, really do something for the college athlete today.
yeah,
Now,
yes.
whether they go to the NFL is, really on to them. But if they're getting NIL deals, there's probably no incentive to necessarily want to go to the NFL.
Well, if you're making money as a high school, or if you're making money as a college kid, and you have the potential to make more money as a professional, I think you're going to go. But I do think we see people, right now staying in college because they, just their situations working out a
They're
little
getting
bit
paid.
better. Yeah, yeah,
They're getting paid. There's no unless you're going to be select. Let's use running backs for an example, even though that's becoming an extinct position to a degree in today's modern NFL offenses. If you're going to be a top 5 pick, you're probably going to go.
yeah, yep, yep.
But if
Whereas
you're going to
if
be picked anywhere after 5 to 10 or below that, they're going to stay for another year because the money in college is just like, yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're going to be like a projected mid-round, 2 to 5, or even after that, then you'll stay in college if you have a good NIL deal, and you have a good thing going, getting a free education in a lot of cases, and
Full
again,
scholarship.
yeah, yeah,
So since we're on the topic of scholarships, obviously there were probably no scholarships for Division 3, but the program that you and Anthony both did, was it what we call a +1, which is a master's degree, a bachelor's +1 master program where the last year was all the student stuff, or did you have to do a separate master's program?
So we both ended up doing a separate master's program. We ended up going through the same school, Lehman College in the Bronx, just not at the same time. Um, but I don't know if Cortland had that at that point in time. I know they have it now, where you go for, and you get your
Mercy College has that because that's where I graduated from, but
okay.
I graduated out of the business school.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm pretty confident that Cortland now has, your undergraduate in physical education, your graduate in health education, and it's 5 years from start to finish.
So, what did you major in? Health science?
So I majored in physical education,
Phys
and
ed.
then
Okay, so you're a
yeah,
gym teacher.
we like to say gym is a person or a place, and physical education
So are you a phys ed and health teacher or just phys ed?
I'm a certified phys ed and health teacher, but I've only taught health from my first professional job on.
What was it like to actually teach health? And did this eventually lead into mental health discussions? Because one thing I will say tied to autism, I appreciated John Jay. They did a lot for me. But when I got to the real world, it wasn't. When I got to college in the real world, the way autism is treated isn't the same as it was at John Jay. In John Jay and college, my IEP would get me things like, extended time, a special location, a proctor to read the
Sure.
exam if needed. But then when you take this thing into the corporate world, unfortunately, I've had a lot of experience with this, especially in the last decade. They start complaining the minute they have to make accommodations.
Okay.
So there were times where I disclosed on job interviews in the last decade, and it was really disheartening the fact that I didn't get calls back afterwards because of the fact that, there are questions on applications where, disclosing probably cost.
And that would be unfortunate if that's the case, and I would certainly hope that it doesn't happen, but realistically, right? That absolutely.
Realistically, not every industry is going to be like what you do, teaching or healthcare, where they're a little more compassionate to an extent. Because, unfortunately, Fortune 500, I work for Fortune 500. Don't get me wrong. It is, United Healthcare is an insurance company and a pharma unit first and foremost. However, because, the medical group that I work for, Caramount, which is now under the UHC umbrella, there is some level of compassion, once you work with doctors because they work with different types of patients.
Yeah. Yes. So absolutely. But the one thing that we were talking about last summer, when we were getting on this topic, was how certain companies are now seeking individuals who are on the autism
Yes.
spectrum because rather than looking at it as a set of disabilities, right? Looking at it as, well, a lot of
Actually,
people
it's
on the autism
it's
spectrum have amazing abilities that people
there's
who are not
actually
on
a
the autism
nonprofit
spectrum can't do.
organization called Ability Beyond Disability that even makes that statement, because
Okay.
what you're just touching on is completely true in the mental health discussion realm. There's a difference between I have a friend from LinkedIn who works at Amazon. She was an immigrant from the Dominican Republic. Her husband's from France. He had a brain tumor.
Oh, wow.
Okay. This is a medical diagnosis. How our country got to treating a developmental disability the same way you treat a life-threatening brain injury, I don't understand. I don't know if that's the government or the mental health, or how the mental health field is just treating these things. But there's, like you said, they're not the same thing.
No, no, they're not. And there's still so much we have to learn about mental health and how to support people who are on various different spectrums of various different things. Um, I think that the world is a lot better now than it used to be with it, in our country specifically, but we still have a ways to go.
Thank you, because I've tried telling, because you just actually said something that I've only been saying for the last year, even to my mother. And I love my mother, and it was very difficult for her as a single parent, with my father, who my father ended up accepting it, but he didn't have the easiest time with it either. But we still, unfortunately, when it comes to autism, we still have a very long way to go with the understanding of this. I would like to sit there and say it's better now, yes, but it's still not that great, especially, you know, in terms of job prospects, for some of us, because a high function and a low function doesn't matter how you label it, it's the same, you know, this is an IEP, and you know this from education
Mhm.
yourself, that some students do not learn the same.
Yeah, yeah. Some people, do not learn that well in traditional classroom environments. And sitting at a desk for 6+ hours a day, and just kind of watching maybe a lecture, taking notes and stuff like that. I do happen to think that I work in a school where there's some fantastic teachers and some really good things that are going on. Um,
But
but
not
it's
every
it's
school
one.
district is like Somers or John Jay, unfortunately. So, and it's funny because on the outside world, you take somebody, there are a lot of school districts just within our own part of the country that probably don't have the same level of funding as, the northern side of Westchester.
Sure, sure.
So in that case, you would make the argument maybe more of a specialized school would suit them. But, you know, I will say yes. From what you're telling me, it sounds like at least educationally, some things have gotten better. I mean, in my last year of college, and I got an interesting story, and this is for you especially. I don't think I touched on this last summer. The reason I was able to graduate Mercy with my bachelor's degree in 2019 was because I had the same professor two times.
Okay,
Math and me have never been best friends.
okay.
So once we left John Jay, I learned my level of math was not good. I had been in remedial almost our whole high school, our whole primary school lives. So math 116 at WCC, I failed that course. Let's see, how many times did I fail that course? I failed that course a total of 15 times over 9.5 years.
Wow.
The reason I passed it in the spring of 2019 is because the professor the semester before, who was basically just sitting there with module based math learning now, thanks to the technology advancements, got sick. We had this Indian woman come in for the last 6 weeks to finish the semester off. What she did, what she told me at the end of the semester after I failed it the 16th time, this is when I'm going to be teaching. Go to your advisor, make sure you get this class at this time, and we'll try to get you over the hump one more, this final time. What happened in that semester is I bombed all three exams, but my perfect attendance and completing every homework is what got me through this.
Makes me think of a uh, Calvin Coolidge quote that I would probably willing to bet most people haven't heard. But he famously said, "Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is filled with educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan press on has solved and always will solve problems of the human race." So,
I did not hear that quote, but that quote makes a lot of sense for my life if you really look at it, because yes, that's what she saw at the end of it, despite the fact that she probably had an autistic relative and she could definitely tell.
so I commend your persistence, Benjamin.
Thank you, because that means a lot, because not everyone is always able to see that. When I'm doing, even when I'm doing something like this, something like when I started doing this project, and for the last part of this, we're going to focus now on the football and coaching aspect. When I started this project 2 years ago, it was very nerve-wracking to start doing this, talking to people, interviewing, trying to learn to be a host and a writer at the same time. And even that was persistence.
Mhm.
How I'm able to do it now is because I've been doing this consistently enough, not just between the writing, but I watch, a lot of hosts on YouTube.
Okay.
I consume content. This is legitimately what most people don't realize is being a content creator nowadays can also be a high 5 to 6 figure, you
Sure.
know, lucrative career. It's not the world's easiest thing to do either, and not everyone can do it.
Yeah, you would you'd love it at the high school where I teach. There's even a podcasting class now where kids I believe they start their own podcast in class and work with one of the teachers in the English department who's a very talented guy on kind of crafting it a little bit. So pretty cool.
That's interesting because I think nowadays what the best thing we could do for the youth is also get them not get them thinking entrepreneurially, because we have no clue what as we get older as a generation, what the job market's going to look like. The job
Mhm.
market nowadays, I know you read it, I know everyone sees what's going on in the media. It's not easy for people.
No, no, it's not. And
Companies stopped, in a very nice way, a lot of industries stopped being loyal to workers nowadays. They'll just basically fire them left and right.
yeah, and in a lot of corporate jobs, you have the luxury of being able to ultimately modify your team for what is best. No different than an NFL 53 man roster, right?
Nope. And it's actually funny because now we're going to touch on the football part of this. Okay. What was it like to be? Did you start out at Byram Hills as an assistant?
Yeah. So I first started teaching and coaching at Arlington High School. I was teaching health there. I was an assistant football coach there. And then the population in the district was going down a little bit. My job was getting accessed, and I was able to land on my feet in Byram Hills. So my first couple of years there, I was an assistant coach, and then
Did you have to
um,
pass your application through the OLAS system, the New York Teacher Online Application System?
yeah, that's pretty much exclusively used by school districts today.
That's what I thought, because when I got my part-time gig in 2018 at Ardsley, it was only because the resume was pulled from there. I
Oh,
had a
okay.
positive experience at that school, minus that school district, minus the fact that in 2020, when COVID first hit, I was let go from the Goodwill, but luckily I had the school district at that point.
Okay, great.
They that was a good experience at that time because it meant, for all the months that it took, for the government to approve the benefits packages, at least the school was something coming in.
What building were you working out of?
I was working out of the middle school, high school building at Hastings.
At Hastings High School.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, cool.
Hastings on Hudson. It was a good district.
Yeah, yeah, great district. Great
It
district.
was a great district. I missed working there, but I ultimately left in June on 2021 because, new opportunities started opening up after, the lockdown started slowly lifting, and
Mhm.
healthcare had the opportunity to finally start hiring.
Yes.
The thing that ended up getting me into healthcare was also having the school district, right there before that as something that was sort of a stepping stone.
Sure. Okay.
So,
That makes sense.
yeah. So you passed through the OLAS system and you also had to take the teachers the teachers licenses. How do you have to renew those often, or are those life?
No. So, previous generations would have a permanent certification that didn't need to be renewed. But what's now given today is a professional certification, it's called. And you have to do a certain amount of hours of professional development every 5 years. I think, I think it's 200 hours every 5 years, something like that. And things like faculty meetings and department meetings count. So most, teachers just kind of fill that out, just with what's required. But I have taken a lot of continuing ed courses as well. And so yeah, every five
It
years
doesn't
it gets
surprise me
renewed.
because even as I said a little earlier, I'm going to circle back on that. We're not immune from having to do, and I even remember having this disagreement with Tommy last summer, on the whole continuing ed thing. Continuing education is unfortunately going to define this generation, you know no matter what you do in this world. I know he may not necessarily like the fact that, continuing at another degree costs more money, but this is how corporate America operates now.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they're not making it easy like when you, Dougie, Ricky, like when you, Tommy, DiMatteo, Ricky all got hired. Like when I graduated in 2019 in the new economy where, everything I did now is basically, what's the nice way to put this? No longer valid and needs upgrades.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
I, I think that you know, there's merit to, staying current in whatever occupation you have, but a lot of jobs require it now. Even talking to Ricky last week, I think he was in some online class that he's got to kind of continue to do for his um, engineering
license.
engineering license. Yeah.
So even though he doesn't like it, he's having to comply and do it, is basically what it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't think most people enjoy, most of these courses take up a lot of time and they also cost money. So yeah, I would say that they're probably not
But
thoroughly
this is what in the business world we call corporate mandates something. You either have to keep up with it or you can't, do what you do.
yeah, to an extent. Yep. What kind of glove is that you got on, by the way?
Funny enough, it's like one of those gardening gloves.
Oh, okay.
I use it to barbecue sometimes. So anyway, all right, now what was it like to work with Anthony DiMatteo now as coaches, somebody who's now won state championships?
Yeah, so, we always talked about, working together at some point down the line. And I honestly didn't necessarily think that they would come where it just kind of worked out. But after coaching my last season at Byram Hills, where I was the head coach, it
What
was
year
tough.
was that?
We had a mini COVID season in the spring of 2020. So we played a 6 game season in March and April. And I didn't see my son, who was born earlier that year, like much at all throughout the season, and I knew that I couldn't continue to do that. So we
Yeah, coaching, especially if you're the head coach and you just had a child, that's one thing that I've been reading about this generation, that a lot of this generation wants to be there for their kids.
yeah, and I think a lot of people see the big, more important picture, and
I
like,
do too. I want to be, I want to get married, but I also want to be there to take care of my mother in this last, in this last phase of her life.
well, hopefully, when you say last phase, again, we mean that as a large chunk of time. But yeah, it was just a sacrifice that I wasn't willing to make anymore. Um, because it was too hard. And now as an assistant coach, it's awesome. I got a lot of flexibility. If I can't make it, to a practice once in a while, then I don't have to go. I do go a lot and I enjoy being there, but um, I certainly have a lot more freedom now. And it's important because I sure I want to be a good coach and be remembered for that, but it's more important to me that I'm remembered as a great dad.
Yeah, and I can respect that. I mean, hopefully as my show and everything that I'm doing, to build the business begins to take off and starts to open up more opportunities for me, I will get that chance. It's just going to be a little more difficult to start a family, once you're starting to hit 40 and over because of there are a lot of other questions, but that would be for a separate discussion. Like for me, the big thing is I want to be there to be able to, have the flexibility like you do to spend more time with my mom and live with my mom, at least one more time,
Okay.
since it is her golden years. So I think I'm going to ask you this one last question. In terms of mental health, what is it? How do you guide those discussions in your classes?
It's a great question. So mental health as a health teacher, it's a whole aspect. It's a whole big part of the health puzzle, so to speak. And I in my class, it's something that it takes priority. I teach about it for our first official unit of the year. I'm actually teaching it about it right now. And I guess some of the goals of the unit are to a bring some practical stress management techniques to the forefront of the attention of these high school kids, so that things like mindfulness and progressive muscular relaxation and techniques that I didn't learn about until I was much older in life kind of get brought to them, very quickly, and hopefully they're able to kind of use a couple of the tools in the toolbox, so to speak. Also to let make sure that we educate people that mental illness is just as common as physical illness, and we should be able to talk about it as commonly, and we don't. um
Well, that was just like childhood. And I'm going to say two things to you. Guess who texted me mid over the weekend? AJ.
okay.
AJ apologized to me and said, if I ever said anything that was hurtful to you as a kid, I'm sorry. When we were going through high school, I said, thank you for, in text, I said, I thank you. This is very appreciated that you were able to recognize that.
And I would also venture to guess that AJ's a great kid.
Of
you know
course.
we all make mistakes and stuff,
Yeah.
but I'm not shocked to hear that he reached out to you and said that.
No, I'm glad that he did. And I even remember at the bachelor party when Dan O'Shea even, said to me when we were talking about it, yeah, I have autistic cousins, so believe me, whatever I said to you as a kid probably wasn't, great, and I apologize for that also.
Yeah, and it doesn't make it right or anything like that, but
No,
we all grow. We all get
that
better. I
was what I noted with the both of them because I graduated with the both of them, but from the aspect of respect, I know everyone loved me when we were kids, but when it came to the mental health discussion, and autism, which was Asperger's syndrome back then. What I didn't like was the stigma where basically they were just thinking, oh, you're mentally retarded. Like
Okay,
that was
sure.
thrown around a lot, and that hurt hearing as a kid because it's like, no, 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 no. You're thinking of what? There's one movie that stands out to me that that I just mentioned to one of my friends today on LinkedIn. Do you remember the movie A Beautiful Mind?
Sure, absolutely.
That was a well done movie. My mother took me to that back when it came out in 2000. And when I think about it now, I realize that the way that movie was done, it was able to at least start to advance the discussion. But, now it's more of a discussion today as you're seeing yourself. And I'm glad that we're finally able to have that normalized discussion. But, it would be nice if we could change people's, the way they viewed it, but the fact that it's now a mainstream discussion is finally appreciated.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
unfortunately, I realize this too. Not everyone wants to change or is capable of changing.
yeah. And again, that's the part I hope educationally, like as a teacher, I'm able to provide, you know, a vehicle basically to allow people to understand more perspectives that are out there, understand and be more empathetic to everyone for all different reasons, right? And specifically so that we can, it, let people know it's okay not to be okay, and it's something that you can talk about, and you can ask for help when
Yes, like
those aren't signs of weakness.
if I'm not doing well in my career and I voice it, I shouldn't be cut off as I have been in the past. And people, even some of our friends, they this is the most important thing they're not always capable of doing. It's listening.
Sure.
Somebody says they're not happy. No, don't rush to give advice. We want you to listen.
Yep.
We
Yep.
want you to do exactly what you're doing because I see it with you. I said it last year. I'll say it again, even here. You've not only have you matured, I see what being a teacher has done for you because it's taught you the most important life skill that anyone can do.
Yeah.
Listen,
Yep.
I
That's
learned
what
that
I.
in retail. I look, in what I do on a daily basis. I don't necessarily like what I do, but, having to listen to people's medical problems, all day on a 9 hour shift through a phone, it's taught me something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot of times we think that we need to say the right thing when it's just a lot of times we need to just listen and be a good listener.
Exactly. So I appreciate you making the time to come here today. And this was a fun filled episode, to record today, especially with an old friend. I really appreciate this. And later this year, I'll keep you in the loop. We're probably going to do we're going to run a couple panel discussions in which I think I'm going to invite you back for,
Okay.
as well as education topics. All right.
I'm
Thanks for coming by
Ben.
and have
It's
a
a
good night.
pleasure. Have a good night, buddy.
Thanks, Doug. Have a good night.
See you, pal.
All right, bye. Okay. Now, how do I